couple of times in the first month to review RFPs, things of that nature, interview firms that submit a bid for the work. You know, I think it'll maybe once a month occasionally. It'll be as needed. I think it's gonna be about they're estimating 15 to 18 months. So it's gonna be a while. You know, work through all the information. There'll be times where we may not even need it all while the consultant is gathering information. So
I'm not wedded to it, but I think I probably have more of the background between teaching and school committee than other folks, but
All right, with that assistance, I will nominate Mike to be the Finance Committee representative to the School Regionalization Study Committee.
I second.
All in favor? Kyle, aye.
Oh, Marcia, aye.
Debbie, I.
Dave, I.
Derek, I.
I suppose I'll vote for myself. We'll make it unanimous.
All right, we make that appointment. Thank you for stepping up, Mike. The next thing we'll do here is the departmental FY26 budget reviews that we have on the system here, on the agenda for tonight. And I believe that for one reason or another, we wanted to do conservation first because Mr. Piniella is there. I suspect that he has to do it rapidly because he's got to go outside and look for some frozen salamanders or something. Hi, Matt. Always
First thing,
good.
Carl, I was gonna go to ZBA, but there is no ZBA, so you can make me wait if you want.
Always great to work with you. Now, the conservation budget was handled by Mike here, so I will let him take over.
Yeah, this was one of the more straightforward ones I think we've encountered to this point in the cycle. Matt and I were able to speak for about 20 minutes on Friday. Essentially, everything is moving forward for fiscal 26, similarly to fiscal 25. In terms of personnel, there are some small reductions and adjustments to the expenses, but overall, not a whole lot to speak of here.
And now this is, we have the conservation agent and an assistant conservation agent, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And we have $5,000 for land management. I'm sure Matt would love to have $50,000 instead of $5, but
Totally unnecessary, Carl.
all right, all right. Does
is that a
anybody
motion, Carl?
on the committee have any questions for either Matt or Mike? With that, I'll take a motion.
I move the finance committee recommend approval of the conservation budget for fiscal 2026 in the amount of $152,798.40.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor? Kyle, aye.
Michael, I.
Marcia, aye.
Debbie, I.
Dave, I. Derek, I.
Okay, the budget for the conservation department is recommended approval as presented.
Thank you all.
Next, the next department, let's do the Board of Health. I think that Debbie had the Board of Health, so I'll let her get us started on that. If our health agent wants to come up to the table, you're welcome to.
We spoke pretty briefly on the phone, I guess, last Friday. I didn't see anything glaring. I think it's is it, did I write down 3? You have 3 personnel?
No, I have, yes, I have 3 personnel
And
now.
then Joy's in the admin and a part-time health nurse. Yeah, so I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add or if anyone had any questions.
Haven't added anything. It's bare bones.
Is somebody getting moved from wage and personnel to clerical union?
No, it was, part-time nursing is, nurse is an actual wage and personnel. It's not on the clerical. So I think the original classification was just in the wrong column.
Okay. So that'll snap back to looking more like it did this year. So,
I didn't have any questions on this one. The one thing I think I would note though is that this is another one of the departments where I sometimes wish we did a better job of matching expenses and revenues. That the Board of Health, I believe, takes in between $75,000 and $90,000 a year in fees, Board of Health permits, et cetera. And see, we bury that in the general fund revenues. So that, you know, when you look at a department like this, that, you know, it's got a budget of $200,000. Well, it's really only costing the town $125,000. Does anybody else on the phone?
Just to add to that, like, good, you know, one of the things that Joyce has done during this current fiscal year, with her knowledge and expertise and capabilities, she is offering ServSafe classes to some of the local establishments during the day at much less, at basic cost of materials. So it's cheaper for the businesses in town. It's more convenient, I think, for some of the businesses in town. And she's done such a good job, even the town clerk was able to pass last week. So,
Wow.
so it just kind of shows that she's doing a great job with that.
All right, excellent.
Now, the part-time health nurse, that's the position that was just recently filled by the select board.
Yes.
Okay. And I know when I met with Holly, the newly appointed director of the senior center, she said that that you sometimes, or the public health nurse collaborates with the senior center, comes there, does.
We are hoping to collaborate with multiple departments.
I
At
think
this point, the public health nurse that we hired is specifically used to do Maven tracking. I am one person in the department. I cannot ask my admin to do many of the tasks that would be helpful to alleviate some of the tasks we need to get done. So at this point, the health nurse is predominantly to do the Maven tracking. I will continue to do the blood pressures at the
Oh, you would
POA
do
for
that.
the time being.
Yeah.
And Maven, just so that people understand, Maven's a state database that has to be maintained by every community. You have to be certified to do it, or credentialed to do it, whatever the right appropriate term is. So if you guys are wondering what that means, it's
The surveillance system for contagious and transmissible diseases. So it's state mandate. I have to have it.
Oh, we want you to have it.
Did you have a question, David?
Yeah, just real quick, line item for consultant, 3,500, what is that?
That is because at some points when we have septic systems, I have to consult with outside expertise if it's a alternative system or a larger system when we're talking about 40Bs or community systems that service more than one home. We need to make sure that they're being done correctly so that we don't jeopardize people's investments and public health at large. So
Okay.
I have to have that. There may be also other times when we need to consult with an epidemiologist, that kind of thing. We do have some state access, but there may be times in which we need to do outside consultant that are above and beyond what the scope of the department is capable of doing.
And that happens, right?
Oh, yeah, it definitely happens. And with ADUs, I'm imagining we're gonna be using it.
Okay. That's the only question I have.
Okay. And were you all done, Marcia?
I was all done.
You're
I agree with
satisfied?
you too, Carl, on somehow reflecting the revenues.
With that, I always try to bring it up when
Totally.
I'm dealing with the fire department or this one or the couple of the others. All right, I'll take a motion.
I can move to.
Good.
Oh, okay. I can move to approve the Board of Health budget for, I hope I'm looking at the most recent one. So it's 200, 534.30.
Second,
All in favor, Kyle, I.
Michael, I.
Marcia, I.
Debbie, aye.
Dave, I.
Derek, I.
We unanimously recommend approval of the Board of Health budget as presented.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's do the Council on Aging next. And that was
That's my
Mike
dad.
and Marcia, so between the two of you.
Right, I'm the one who got to meet with,
And I haven't met with the.
this is our new director.
Hi.
Oh, Pike, Colin. Glad to meet you.
And I can't find mine. I'm sorry. I'm looking upside down here. I wrote notes on mine. I met with Holly and met with her. I don't think this budget was probably prepared before you became the director, right?
Well, I officially become director next week.
Oh, okay, so you're still
Yes.
acting director. Congrats. And you know, Holly has a revolving fund, complicated, following up on Carl's point. I wish we should be more transparent about that so the public knows that a lot of the programs you offer are really revenue neutral. They don't really cost the taxpayers anything. I think the only change in this budget is the carried over was in FY 24, we created the assistant director position. And that position is in the top line item for wage and personnel. Is that correct, Holly?
Yes.
Okay. And although the position was unfilled for a while, Holly feels strongly, and I support her since she was the assistant director, that we need to fill the assistant director position, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
What else does that line pay for?
Okay.
$235,000?
It's 3 full-time staff.
Okay, so besides you and the assistant director, there's a third position?
Correct.
And what's
No, I'm
the
sorry. So yes, the director, the assistant director, and an outreach coordinator.
outreach coordinator? Okay, thank you.
You also have a transportation coordinator, but that's not reflected in the top line. That's
Second line.
the clerical union, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And there are also 4 part-time van drivers, correct? And this was the part that's confusing to me. And maybe you could explain it. And that is line item is labor, correct? The 93,912. They work 1 week on, well, we do it full time, but there's one driver that works week 1 and a separate driver that works week 2.
2 and 2.
2 and 2. Okay. And they're not classified as full-time employees. They don't collect health insurance. Is that correct?
Correct.
But they participate in our retirement.
I believe so, yes.
This was confusing to me, Keith. I don't understand.
So I think the schedule has been, the 2 van drivers work 1 week, and they have the following week off. The second 2 van drivers work the week that the first 2 are off. So it's a part-time job. It's not benefits eligible, so they're not receiving health insurance. They're not eligible for retirement either. So they are not benefit eligible.
Okay, so, but,
And we also get reimbursed for them. There's about a $95,000 a year reimbursement from GATRA.
okay, see, another thing that's not,
Right.
where is that money buried, you know?
That's in the local revenues for the budget,
All right.
out of the $6.5 or $7 million general fund local revenue.
That would really make a big difference in Holly's budget
Right.
here, if that $93,000, whatever we get reimbursed back, would, so to Carl's point, I think.
If I could, Mr. Chair, one of the things we'll do next year is we'll try to provide on the budget information somehow. If a department is offset by some sort of departmental revenue, we'll provide that on the budget sheet so people can get a sense of what the net cost of those budgets are. If you'd like to see that, we're happy to provide it.
Yes.
Never been asked for before, so
Yeah.
I apologize. We're happy to do that.
I think they would
She's
make
gonna
the.
have to do it, so I'm happy.
And again, it is part of the education of relatively new members of finance committee.
That's very good.
I need to work more with them going through the detailed, of the local revenues and showing that, hey, this goes to that line, this one goes to that line, et cetera.
I do think it would be a good PR move too, to make the public realize
Yeah.
we are hard at work, you know, trying to reduce the tax burden that everybody carries. So that would be great. The only other thing about Holly's, about the budget that I didn't understand, and I think this is true, but with everybody here, maybe you could clarify it. The food service, that is really a revenue neutral item. It doesn't cost the senior center to sponsor the cafe. Is that
I'd say about, from my knowledge, about 50%.
okay?
That they spend this $20,000 and they'll have lunch revenue again in the general revenue of somewhere around 8 or 10K.
Is that it? Because
Sure.
I couldn't understand. I thought it was more revenue neutral, but it's not. We subsidize. So
So there are a few events that we offer at no charge to the seniors. So that would be,
oh, that's
Yes.
right.
Yep.
That's the volunteer lunch, the Mother's Day and the Father's Day lunches.
correct.
Okay.
Big Thanksgiving dinner.
Thanksgiving.
Christmas,
All right. And
yeah.
those are at no cost to everybody. That's right. You told me that. I'm sorry, Holly. With those clarifications, I think that the facility is really well maintained. It's beautiful. I think I was there on a Monday and it was really low utilization day, I guess.
That was an $8 million investment by the town a few years ago, a new building.
It is beautiful,
Yeah.
you know, and I wish we could, you know, use it more, you know. Oh, it would be great.
In
Much
fact,
easier than what-
in past years, when I start having a problem in this building for meeting rooms, I've scheduled meetings over there.
Oh, it's lovely.
Because I find that the people are very welcoming to us over there.
Anytime.
Besides, I'm almost a senior citizen.
So I recommend I want to make sure everyone.
Does anybody else have
Oh,
any
sorry.
questions before we make a motion? Go ahead, Marcia.
I recommend that we adopt the proposed budget.
I did have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, speak up.
The drug and alcohol line item, what exactly is that?
So our van drivers are required to, they do random drug tests through, it's a provision in the GATRA contract.
Okay. Keith, is this something that we can fund out of the opioid settlement fund?
I don't know that we can. The reason I say that, I'm happy to look, but, you know, I don't know that that's gonna be, would be considered somehow preventing, or being proactively trying to prevent, you know, drug use. I can certainly ask the question, and if we can, I can certainly let the finance committee know. But it depends how broad they're gonna allow the definition. I'll check and let you guys know next time you meet.
Thanks.
Sure.
Nothing further.
Okay, thanks, Derek.
Now you go.
Okay. I move that we accept the Council on Aging's budget for FY 26 of $428,289,040.
Second.
And 40 cents, I'm sorry, for $40.
All in favor, Carl, I.
Michael, I.
Marcia, I.
Tippy eye.
Dave, I.
Derek, aye.
We unanimously recommend approval of the Council on Aging budget as submitted. Next, let's do the library.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Holly.
you.
Nice to meet you.
I spoke briefly with Donald last Friday. And the, wage and personnel, represents 5 full-time and a clerical 3 part-time.
The clerical line is 3 full-time and 2 part-time.
Oh, okay. And, so the request was 2.8, which is within, what we recommended. There was a discrepancy between his budget and, his budget. And I don't know if you talked to him about that. It looks like the selectmen, went with Keith's. So that's all I have.
Okay, one of the things that I'm gonna suggest on this budget is after going through the pain of what the fire department has requested, what the police department has requested, and what the current local schools not only request, but what we have in the budget. We have in the budget a 7% increase for schools. We have I think over 6% for fire, and I think close to 10% for police. And this budget being cut back is one of the areas where we thought we'd try to, save something and, perhaps have to close one afternoon or do something. So I'm putting it out on the table here for the finance committee to consider increasing this budget back by $25,000 to the original request so that there won't have to be any changes in the services coming from the library. The latest pass on the budget we'll talk about towards the end of this meeting, but we think we have a $60,000 plus excess levy capacity. So there's room to cover this $25,000 if we decided to go that way. I think that if the finance committee decides to go that way, we can work with the Board of Selectmen, and they are very likely to agree that this might be something that we should be doing. I think that the town administration will consider, what I'm saying and go forward. So is there any thoughts or comments from my fellow members here where I'm suggesting that we should perhaps increase this budget by $25,000?
I did talk briefly with Donald, and there's also the Library Foundation. Is that right? Where they can access additional funds for activities and stuff. So there is other assets available outside this budget for the use of the library.
Right.
So I'm not necessarily sure that we need to increase it. I'm almost willing to go along with what the selectmen recommended.
Okay. Sure, go ahead, Mike.
So
As much as I love.
I feel like this came up last week and I apologize that I don't remember it. The property are under expenses. I know it's not huge in the grand scheme of things, but it seems to keep popping up. What does that stand for and what is driving the increase on that?
So the increase for that, so originally that was an account that was previously used during COVID times for the installation of the tent that the library was using for outdoor programming. We were no longer using the tent for that. So I reduced the budget. I attempted to zero it out last year. The town accountant put $200 in the account to cover our water bills.
Right.
So unfortunately, because I'm responsible for the library itself and the Adams Center, the first water bill we got for both buildings basically ate that $200 up. But now we're also responsible for sewer. So the 2,000 is for sewer and water for both library and Adams Center.
Right. The 25,000 that Carl is talking about, if I'm reading this right, is out of books and periodicals. I guess my first question is, does that $103,000 number put us anywhere near in jeopardy of losing that kind of state seal of approval that I know was a conversation in the past?
With our certification, with the $25,000 cut, overall percentage wise.
Yep.
Depending on how the other town departments are impacted this budget round, as long as the library is not disproportionately cut, then the state potentially will approve a waiver due to the other requirements that, if it was a case of that we weren't opened enough, if I didn't have a master's degree and all those other, requirements, but with it being the one financial cut, they may consider it if all is, fair, playing field. Perhaps looking at the double-digit increases for other departments, the state probably won't, but there's always the potential. But that wouldn't happen until we have to file, financial reports like next summer. So it won't impact until, after that.
Does that go off the table as long as the budget increases by some amount? So what I'm doing, if I'm looking at this right, the town administrator's revision to your proposal amounts to a cut of a little under $2,500.
1,000.
Well, but
Okay.
over
Overall.
the last year.
Yeah.
Right? If that, as long as the number goes up from last year, does that put us out of jeopardy in that regard, or does it have to be considered reasonable?
So the books and material budget is supposed to reflect for our population size.
Yep.
The requirement is it's supposed to be 16% of our overall budget. The other portion of that is that our budget for annually should be an average of the last 3 years times 2.5%.
Okay. I guess more globally, I understand where you're going with this. For me, at least, it's a little early on to be moving the other direction, given how precarious everything still seems. I'm not opposed to it on principle, but I don't know that I'm ready to go there tonight.
Okay. David, do you have any thoughts?
Crunching numbers, Carl, crunching numbers.
Derek, you have any thoughts or questions or comments?
Michael already had asked the question that I was wondering about. That being said, if the board were inclined to increase the line item for books and periodicals, I would support that.
I'll meet you in the middle.
Jane, can you tell us exactly what the $25,000 reduction does to the services you'll be providing?
So the books and periodicals account pays for all physical and digital content that the library purchases. It also is used to pay for certain databases that the library has. So for example, we have the consumer reports database, which can be paid because it's basically the virtual, the electronic version of the print consumer reports. What it will do ultimately is, result in us, purchasing less materials, which will then bring down our overall circulation statistics, which then will affect our eligibility for state aid because that will be reduced because it is based upon the usage and reciprocal borrowing. My concern, with this budget as well, with any type of cut, specifically with this budget, is that, we're at this point at this, this year, but next year, there's the potential of, always getting cut more or what have you. And I'm just always concerned that, the further you get behind the 8 ball, you don't catch up. And the state, is, with things that are going on in the world, grant opportunities will be more limited to us. And things like that. So I, respectfully ask if you, would you consider the, restoration of funds. However, I also recognize that there is financial concerns in the community.
All right, well, in order to move us off of this, I'm going to make a motion and we'll vote on it and see where we go. I move that the Finance Committee recommend approval of the library budget at $822,434.16 as submitted by the department. Do I have a second?
I mean, I can second it.
I have a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Carl, I.
Michael, no.
Marcia, no.
Debbie, no.
Derek, yes.
Dave goes with the chair. Yes.
All right, we have a 3-3 vote, so the motion does not pass. I will now make a motion to recommend approval of the library budget at $797,434.16 as presented by the town administrator and approved by the Board of Selectmen. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Carl, I.
Michael, I.
Debbie, I.
Derek, no.
David, I.
Marcia, I.
We recommend approval
Oh, you can
at
ask.
5-1 for the library budget as presented. Thank you, Donald.
Wait, but the only reason I voted no, I'm just gonna be honest with you, is I don't know enough about these other funding sources. Is it possible that they could make up this $25,000 shortfall? I know that we get a lot of money from the state for the library. Another thing that we need to tell the taxpayers. They don't know that. They just look at this bottom line and think, oh my God, they
Well,
want.
I wouldn't call it that we get a lot of money.
Well-
I want to say $18,000 or.
So so we recently got our most recent initial payment, which was $20,000 from state aid. This was actually, I think, last week or the week before. And all of that is based upon usage and, the services that we provide to not only our residents, but also non-residents. There is, support out there, but it's going to impact it, as we go along. The materials budget is cut more. That's going to ultimately mean less in state aid, so that there's going to be less state aid to supplement the book budget, and it's going to be a cycle.
Oh, I understand that, but I'm just asking, or is it possible for these other funding sources, in your judgment? I don't even know what they are, quite frankly, to make up this.
My experience is that the library foundation, whatever they can contribute is used more for special one-time things, not for the day-to-day operations of
Correct.
the library.
Correct. So they'll fund, like they do a lot of funding of our program. So for example, we do have a programming account budget line through the town at 2,500. On average, we spend between 12 and 15,000 a year on programming, and that is supplemented by state aid as well as through the foundation. They do, improvements, the purchase of new furniture and things like that, capital projects like that. And they do, try to do as much as they can, but they, this is in a way an outside group that I make an ask. Potentially they can say no because they feel the purview of that ask is a town responsibility.
Okay,
So, it's not always guaranteed.
okay.
I will also say, just real quick for what it's worth, that we had something similar to this within the elementary schools for technology, where a lot of it during a dry spell got offloaded into the Kingston Foundation for Education and some other groups. And, for as much as my overall worries, I certainly understand your point that you don't want something that needs to be for the functioning of the library a regular part of your annual baseline to get offloaded. I definitely see where that's going.
I'll close the discussion on the library by stating one more time that I find it troubling that we have a budget that has been approved by the town administration, has been approved by the Board of Selectmen. We're on our way to approving it in the Finance Committee. That budget includes an increase of 7.1% for education, 10.3% for police, and 9.5% for fire. If I didn't have those kind of increases, I wouldn't be looking for level funding at something like the library. But I do think it's disproportionate. And with that, let's move on to the planning board.
Thank you for coming.
Next item.
Thanks, Sonny.
Thanks, Donald. Okay, planning department was Mike here.
Yeah.
We have our planner. How are you today?
Good, thank you. How
Good
are
to
you?
see you. I'm well, thanks.
How's retirement?
As soon as I finish up my finance committee assignment, it will be very good.
Okay.
So Valerie and I spoke for a little while on Friday morning. Essentially, her budget is unchanged with one major exception, which is that there is a cut to the staffing in her office for someone who is part-time as an assistant planner.
Yeah.
Whose responsibilities have diminished due to the relative lack of development secondary to the water moratorium, and whose responsibilities the town administration has recommended be folded into those of an administrator for the building inspection department. My understanding is that almost literally, with the exception of the usual adjustments for cost of living increases, that this budget is unchanged from fiscal 25.
We're a very small budget. Operating budget is around $5,000. That hasn't changed for 10 years. And the top line, I'm just showing you that the staffing really has been a reflection of the level of experience. And we had Tom Bott here for 17, 18 years. And then you brought in a planner with relatively no experience for a couple of years, and then they were terminated, and you brought in a planner with a level of experience that Mr. Bott had. And then we went to having the administrative assistant go to assistant planner. And then with the water moratorium, the development has slowed down. So Erin went part-time last year, and we cut her budget in half. And she's on par to run about $20,000 this year in terms of staffing. And we have in the budget estimated around $30,600 for overtime covering meetings. So we estimate that this cut that's being recommended by the town administration would be valued at about $2,600. It's a representative cut.
Do you see a need for a full-time assistant?
No,
Okay.
I'm happy with my 10 to 20 hour a week assistant. I understand that we're trying to shave every nickel. But I'm concerned that if we have the development, I think we will be having, and I have the housing production plan, the hazard mitigation plan, the master plan, and town meeting activities, that it might be a little bit overwhelming, but I can't predict the future.
I understand, and we always are good at the town of Kingston, kicking the can down the road until it becomes a problem. Does anybody have any questions? I looked at this budget myself, and I didn't have any questions. I have a motion.
I move that the finance committee recommend a budget for the planning board for fiscal 26 in the amount of $126,978.
I can second it.
All in favor, Kyle, aye.
Michael, I.
Marcia, I.
Debbie, I.
Dave, I.
Derek, I.
We unanimously recommend the planning department's budget as presented.
In hopes that we will soon have reasons to
Increase it.
reverse
Right.
this.
Do you want to hear Kyle Pike say for the 22nd time in 5 years that Kingston will never allow significant commercial development because we don't know how to fight back when people start saying no, no, no. And there are always pockets of residents who do not want this or do not want that for one reason or another. So I think that I can remember sitting in this same chair probably 10 years ago, talking about how much commercial growth we needed. Well, we managed to get the Amazon and UPS and marijuana. We haven't seen a lot of other stuff.
We're severely restricted by the water moratorium,
Yeah.
townwide. There would have been a lot more development if we didn't have a water moratorium.
You really believe
I
that?
do. We've had to turn away a lot of people.
I hope you're right. I hope
I
you're
am
right,
right.
Val. I hope you're right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Val. The next department, Recreation Departments. Recreation was, I think, almost if it wasn't the first, it was either the first or second department that I was assigned when I came in here 10 years ago. And I don't know if it says something about me or Sue. We're both still here.
I got a couple of years on you.
Yes. I think Deb and Marcia shared the responsibility for,
Yeah, I
Looking at the
spoke briefly,
recreation
Marcia
department.
probably can do this one because she's had more time with Sue.
Yeah, I met with Sue and toured, well, I didn't get the full tour, but it's a beautiful, it's beautiful. The facility is beautiful. And she runs a huge amount of programs with very minimal staff. So let's see. She does have a revolving fund, and all of her program fees she deposits into that revolving. The top line of the budget includes 2 full-time positions, which are Sue and your full-time clerical person, correct?
The clerical is under the clerical, the second line.
The second line.
So the top line includes myself, a couple of part-time people that are year-round, and then our team. Just one from May through August.
Right, and then your seasonal staff would largely your waterfront director.
Grays Beach Park, and then some of our summer program.
Right, so, but some of those positions went unfilled last year.
Correct. The last couple of years, actually, since probably COVID, we've had challenges filling the waterfront director and lifeguard positions. So we've kept those in the budget just to be cognizant of the town to make sure we continue to do that for safety purposes on that particular property. And we've returned the funds back the last few years because that hasn't been utilized.
Yeah, do you think you'll be able to hire someone?
There's still a challenge throughout different areas. Ours is hard because it's tide dependent, so the staffing is somewhat erratic for the waterfront and lifeguards down there. So sometimes they can get a better opportunity in another town.
Right. And then you have 2 part-time employees that work 25 to 30 hours.
Nope, less than 18. They're
Okay.
part-time, so they would be less. than 19 or less.
Property support and their property support, right?
They do program, their title is property and program coordinator.
Okay. All right. And so it seems the only expense that and I can't remember, you might have explained this, and it might be electricity, was the athletic fields. The line item of 56.7. Do you see that, Susan?
Yes, 56,700.
Was that for electricity?
No,
Is that for paying?
no, that's for the overall. So there's the overall property cost for running the Okeechobee Athletic Complex, and then the Reed Field property is about $180,000 projected each year, give or take, depending on the year. The town supports $56,700 of that. The remaining comes either from user fees or cell tower revenue that's on that property. So it's the entire cost of it. So it includes turf management, irrigation costs, well costs, mowing costs, and then miscellaneous property repairs.
Now, is that a line item that could be paid out of the revolving funds, do you think? I don't know. I know
Part of it is, so for example, the user fees that we received from the Kingston Youth Sports Organization
Okay.
last year, their user fee, I believe, was either $64,000 or $67,000. So that money goes into the revolving fund, and then therefore that money then paid out and used for those expenses that I just mentioned.
So this line item is what you feel cannot be paid for out of the revolving fund account. Is that?
Well, we would have to get money in from somewhere to
Somewhere.
be put into the revolving fund, then to pay it back out. So we're receiving about $66,000 and then about another $30,000 in the revenue from the cell tower. So if we were to take that $56,000 out, the only place it could come from was our KCU sports organization and all those users, and that would be doubling, more than doubling
There.
the cost. And in addition to what they pay in a user fee, they also are a fundraising organization. So I don't have an exact, I have to get some more information, but probably about 12 years into overseeing that property from the department's perspective, that organization has probably donated over $1 million in capital improvement projects. So they are a partner with that, or that particular property. They've helped with some of the infrastructure. So there's quite a bit of money that they're supporting over the years in various fundraising opportunities, but it's not a given that they have that money every single year.
I'd like to ask maybe for them
Sure.
to do more too, with all they already
They
do.
a lot.
I hear you. I hear you. I'm just trying to ask these
Sure.
questions because other people ask me,
Sure,
you
yeah.
know, can't they just pay this out of all their fees they charge? So
They pay quite a bit.
everybody wants fees, raise their fees. We talked about the beach stickers, you know, they
Right.
already, they got raised,
They're
right?
increased.
So, well, those were, you know, I think it's I'll let Susan, if she wants, tell about all the programs they run. You know, they run tons of programs. They're obviously very popular because I saw your deposits into the revolving fund. So
That's why we needed to increase the threshold last year. I think last year, depending on the programming, again, the money comes in and money goes out.
right.
We have an opportunity to continue to grow if we have that threshold raised in our revolving account. And the good news is that we have been able to do that for the community in the last several years. And we just keep adding more things for our community to do with, like you said, 2 full-time people. So we
Yeah.
oversee 3 properties, well, 3.5 on the plant school as well. So there's a lot that we do in not a lot of resources. We're very creative in partnering. I was just talking here saying we need to meet soon when she gets acclimated to her new position. And how can we work together? And that's how we're pretty resourceful.
Right, and you've got a great setup, so you never really lose any money because everything's prepaid. If you don't have enough registrants, the program is canceled, so it's like it doesn't cost anybody anything. You've got a great setup there, and it's wonderful. It seems well utilized by both residents and non-residents.
Yes, we ran over 400, let's see if you want some information, 6,400 registrations, more than 430 programs, 363 facility reservation requests. We have 14,000 members in our website, and then probably about 6,700 household accounts that we manage and oversee as well. There's a lot, not going on, which is great.
It is. So,
My comments on recreation department, I think people have heard me say it before, but to reiterate, I've always felt that the partnership that Sue and her people have with the Kingston Youth Sports Organization is a benefit to the town. I have never liked the fact that we spend about, 1/3 of the money for the field maintenance. But I do recognize that that's probably a real bargain when we're getting, 2/3 of it from Kingston Youth group there, plus the user fees on other things, so that I think that's worked well. The other thing I'll say about Sue is she's very good at finding other sources of funds. So I'm going to ask her now, do you have anything in the pipeline now for CPC or for the Sampson Fund or some of these places where you managed to get some money for recreation?
We did put in a request for the Sampson Fund to continue our music nights down at Grace Beach Park, that community event that we do every year, which is great. We're looking into acoustic sunrise. So if anybody likes to get up early in the morning, we might be doing some music and coffee down at Grace Beach Park as well, if we can use those funds. And then CPC, we did not put an application in this year. there's lots of other opportunities that other departments and other places need, so we kind of took a break on that. We will be coming back next year. But I think that's kind of it. We don't have any grants that we're looking at this particular point.
And for a while there, you were having concerns or problems about the building being, who was taken responsible for after hours opening or closing. And I know you were working with the facilities people here, a town administrator. Are those problems behind us? Or?
They are. That was the creation of the Recreation Program and Property Coordinator. So that position was created when those services were removed due to the shift in the facilities department and the contract services for custodial. So we've been able to support and manage that. And I'm not there all the time.
Those are those two part-time positions that we put, yeah, right. Which I thought was a very creative way to deal with that situation.
Okay, that's all I have. Does anybody else have any comments or questions? Derek says no. I see Deb says no. Mike? All right, can I have a motion?
Yes, I move that we accept the Recreation Commission's budget for fiscal year 2026 of $4,000 to $426,574.
Second.
All in favor? Kyle, aye.
Michael, I.
Marcia, I.
Debbie, I.
Say bye.
Derek, I.
Recommend approval of the Recreation Department's budget as presented unanimously. Thank you.
Sue.
Sue. And the next one here is Veteran Services. So we have a new Veteran Services Director here.
Evening, everybody.
Just moving in, introduce yourself.
I'm Sarah Lansing. It's my third day.
Good.
Be fine, so she stays.
How do you spell it, Sarah? With an H?
No H. Lansing, like the capital of Michigan.
Yep.
L-E-N-S-I-N-G.
Gotcha.
Yep. I haven't even seen it.
I know, I'm actually.
It's all right.
I'm looking at it right now.
So the veteran service budget is consistent with the way it has been in the past. Over the last couple of years, there's been a small amount of unexpended funds in the appropriation that's been approved by town meeting. We've adjusted the budget to reflect the director's fiscal 26 salary. And we'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Why'd you bump medical by $5,000?
So that medical is for a program called Chapter 115, which is required by state law for lower income veterans or their widows. So in by law, if anybody comes into the office, we have to pay them for that benefit. Last year's numbers, because I did pull that up, they went over in the medical ordinary benefits, and then they had to do a town meeting transfer. For funds to cover the cost for that. The state does reimburse the town 75% of what's spent out of that line item. So we get most of that money back from the state.
Yeah, that's the only question I had, and maybe this is more Kathleen than. I thought I remembered that 75% of this was reimbursement. And yet when I look at the local revenues, it seems to me I'm seeing around $90,000 for veterans services in revenue. So maybe it's in a separate place, a different place or something?
We can take a look and.
Yeah, we can look into it. Yeah.
State stiffness.
No.
We get money in the cherry sheets.
Just slush fund.
Oh, okay. That would,
Yeah.
that would make
I
sense.
think,
We get it back?
Yeah.
75%? Okay, I hope so.
Okay, I didn't consider that. That's probably where I'm missing.
Where would it be? I'm sorry, I didn't look.
For the revenue line, in our revenue, that we show reflect our line.
The veterans reimbursement?
Yeah.
The veterans are, the revenue that's returned to the town.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
Is returned by the state.
177,000. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that
Got
makes
it,
sense.
found it?
See, I learned something tonight.
Bingo.
Thank you.
177, so that's about right.
So this is another one that,
Right.
I always look at that, the fact that it looks like it's a $320,000 budget. It's what, 180 come out of that, you're looking at more like $140,000 that it's actually costing the town. All right, I don't have any other comments or questions. Any other members?
Well, just looking at the percentage change, it says 29%.
I think that's because we actually have a employee that we
Yeah,
didn't.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
And we're mandated by law to have a veterans. We have
So
to.
there's a couple of things if I could.
Okay,
We have to have a veterans agent.
right.
Historically, we have used the town of Plymouth's veterans agent as our full-time veterans agent. We had two stellar veterans admins downstairs that split the time in the past. They have since retired. Beyond that now, the Commonwealth of the Veterans, the VA is now requiring our veterans agents to be certified through the Veterans Administration to submit claims on behalf of the town of Kingston for reimbursement from the Veterans Administration. So we frankly stole Sarah from our neighboring community.
That's scary.
She is one of the few veterans agents on the South Shore that is already credentialed. So she has taken it upon herself in the recent past to go through the programs and put herself in that position. So we have not had any impact or disturbance in our ability to file veterans claims, first and foremost. Secondly, we've had to allow us to file veterans claims, which I understand is about 50% of the claims we file. Maybe that's.
Yeah, you look for everybody.
And I'll show
to file.
you, this is the day 3, but this is from my memory. To not be able, we have to have now a licensed veterans agent. We can't get away. We spoke to Plymouth because there's much more hands-on work to file a veterans claim than it used to be. The veterans agent in Plymouth is backing away from providing that veterans agent service to some of the neighboring communities.
Yeah.
So we got, I think, very, very lucky with Sarah and her capabilities and her certifications, and look to grow older with her as we work
Hey, maybe
together
we
for
can
years to
enter
come.
into some mutual aid agreements for you to be the veterans agent. Halifax, Plymouth.
Well, so, and again, so we looked at Sarah, to be very honest with you, I don't think it's, I'm speaking out of turn. Sarah was the veterans agent in Duxbury prior to being here. Sarah proactively reached out and asked if we would have an interest in sharing a veterans agent. We pursued that. And at the time, Duxbury chose to not want to partner with Kingston. What we would have had to done, what we would have had to have done is create a district for Kingston and Duxbury. For whatever reasons, Duxbury they chose not to move forward with that. Sarah and I have still had conversations. We would have to broach those, with the Board of Selectmen, frankly, and see if there's an interest in moving forward and doing something like that. But we are still open and trying to pursue some sort of a shared veterans agent with one or more communities. What that would entail is obviously, I've been going too long, but what that would entail, I think, is providing Sarah some administrative support, so she can process what she has to process as the agent, and we'd have a position for administrative support that would help process and prepare the paperwork for Sarah's review and signature. So that's something we hope to do in fiscal 25, but with no guarantees or no agreement in place, we just didn't reflect that on in our budget.
And the VA claims are really important because it gives federal tax-free money straight to the residents. So if you know any veterans or widows of veterans, there's a lot of benefits for them too. So please send them to my office. It also opens up property tax abatements and other state benefits. So we can get more people on those.
We have a
It
lot of
helps-
senior citizens.
It helps out a lot of people, you know, that
They're
are
probably
on
like
in their house.
We keep doing a lot of these things and there'll be 20% of us paying the taxes, 80%.
And we all be working off our taxes at the senior center.
All right, any other questions? Motion, please.
I move that we accept the veterans benefits proposed FY 26 budget in the amount of $321,334.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor, Carl, I.
Michael, aye.
Marcia, I.
Debbie, I.
Dave, I.
Derek, I.
We recommend approval unanimously 6-0-0 for the veterans benefits.
Welcome aboard.
Budget.
Thanks,
Guys,
Erin.
it was really nice
Welcome,
meeting
welcome.
everybody. Enjoy the rest of your night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The last budget to be reviewed is the Historical Commission.
It's history.
A very, very small budget.
I just move approval with $1,000.
Hold on.
I have a question on this one. We seem to have gotten a last minute revision here at $250 versus $1,000.
Oh, there you go.
Wow.
Does, could I have some explanation for that?
Certainly. The FY 25 budget that was voted at town meeting last May of 24. Actually reflected, it was supposed to be 250 and was inadvertently recorded as 1,000. So in doing the reconciliation of town meeting to munis, it was discovered by Rhonda. She found it, it's a little bit of a needle in a haystack. So it was corrected in 25 and then it was accordingly like adjusted in 26 to be the same.
So the budget they've been living with for this year is $250.
They're at $10 year to date.
The reason I bring this up is I believe this is Craig Dalton's account. Does he know it's 250? Because he's,
I have not spoken.
okay, well, if he's listening or, you know, decides to spend some money, we're all gonna hear that he thought he had $1,000 budget. I'm telling you that.
It's a public hearing, Carl. It's a public hearing.
Yeah. All right.
All right,
Anybody have any other questions or concerns? Satisfied with it at $250?
Sure am.
duly chastised, I move that we approve the Historical Commission budget of $250 for fiscal 26.
I second it.
All in favor, Carl, I.
Marcia, I.
Debbie, I.
Dave, I.
Derek, I.
Who said aye, Mike?
Makes
Aye.
We recommend the approval at the $250 limit as resubmitted tonight. That takes care of our detailed budget reviews for tonight. The budget reviews that we're scheduled to do next meeting, 2 weeks from tonight, accounting, assessing, revaluation, collector, treasurer, tax title, debt service, town clerk, elections and registrations, human resources, wage and personnel, employee benefits, and information technology. I would say that all of those are pretty straightforward and don't take a lot of time. The employee benefits is the only significant dollar one. That's, we'll have Mr. Hickey and whoever else he brings along to explain the great medical insurance expenses and the pension insurance, pension benefits. That's where all that money comes from. The next item I'll talk a bit about is I gave you kind of a revenue update last month. Now I'm going to update that a bit. We've been looking at an original budget as prepared by our town administration and presented to the selectmen. Since that original one, we have a updated budget that has been approved by the Board of Selectmen. That budget I'm just gonna summarize it here. It included increases in revenue, $481,000 for state aid, 445 of which was specifically schools. We've also increased local receipts by $328,000. I'm going to ask right now for Keith and Kathleen to send me an update that shows where we're getting that $328K.
Sure.
And also on state aid, we had the charges that we get on the cherry sheets from the state aid were actually $77K less than originally had been estimated. So the long and short of it is that the administration here, and I guess we should say all of us, the administration, the Board of Selectmen, and the Finance Committee have had $886,000 of what I call additional revenues to be applied. Okay, we have some choices. If one had wanted to stick with that original budget, that's $886K that could have gone into excess levy capacity. Okay, it has not. Keith and I talking together, I agreed just as one member of the committee here that the $445K of specific state aid identified as for Chapter 70 local schools should in fact go to increase the 4% targeted increase that we had for local schools. I think both Keith and I did this, number one, somewhat in fairness, but also more importantly, feeling that, hey, if we passed along 440, if we went from 4% recommended school increase to 7+% based upon giving them this $445K, perhaps it'd be some compromise from the other side that perhaps local schools would find a way to reduce their budget. They have not. We'll talk more about that in my next area.
Okay.
So anyhow, long and short of it, $886K of increased revenue ability offset by $445K going to local schools budget, $211K going to the police budget, $178K going to the fire budget, and $52K of increased excess levy capacity.
Do you mind reading those numbers off
Sure.
one more time?
$445K to schools, $211 to police, $178 to fire, and the
52.
excess levy capacity is increased by $52K.
Okay.
That's what's in the budget that the Board of Selectmen approved last Tuesday night. Okay. My comment is I'm starting to get a little bit concerned that the bottom line of the expenses now in that budget have increased by $3,386,000 from last year, from FY25. I'll repeat that. $3,386,000, which is an increase of 5.9%. So we have an expense increase here that I personally, as one finance committee member, are trying to convince myself that I need to support. that's increased by 5.9%. One more time, this town cannot do 6% in expense increase every single year without doing Proposition 2.5 increases every single year. Right now, we're looking at that 5.9% without any Proposition 2.5 increase because we had 900K of excess levy capacity left over from last year, because state aid has come up higher. These are all one-time items that we're not going to live with, or we're not going to have forever. Another troubling thing is, to me, local schools are at 7.1% in this budget. What they're looking for is 13.7%, another $1 million, okay? Public safety is at 9.7%, okay? Until somebody, whether it's the town administration, whether it's the finance committee, whether it's the board of selectmen, whether it's school committees, start saying no, we just will not be able to afford Kingston. A little more about this expense of $3,386,000 to give you an idea. $1,028,000 of that is what's been plugged into the budget for schools, 7.1%. $880K of it is what's been plugged in for police and fire. Now that's your 9.7% increase. Fringe benefits, $496,000, 6.1%. That's basically a combination of medical insurance and pensions. Silver Lake assessment, okay, even at 4%, that's a $670K increase. And will we live with 4%, or will Silver Lake be able to live with 4%? Questionable. So what that left all other towns, and that's when I start to feel the pain of the library, the Board of Health, the planning department, everybody else, that their increase is $312K out of $3,376,000 for a 3.4% increase. It's just, we are forcing, I believe, issues by overfunding our police and fire now and overfunding our schools at the expense of everything else in this town. Okay, that's my my general comments. I'm going to give you one more update on local schools and then open it up to the floor here to my fellow members for their thoughts and comments. You've heard me say we've got an increase for schools in there of 1028, 7.1%. The school committee approved, the local school committee approved a budget increase Monday night of $1,995,000, 13.7% increase. That 995,000, that represents an increase of $967,000. So the school committee, local school committee, will be going before the Board of Selectmen next Tuesday night, looking for a Proposition 2.5 override of $967K just for your local school. Okay?
Elementary and intermediate. Yes.
Right, that's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. Now, what I found troubling, and continue to find troubling, is that the increase, the gross increase in their budget year to year. I keep telling myself I'm not going to get involved in these budgets like I do, but
You can't resist yourself.
You're looking for Carl.
Yeah, it's easier on another page. In any case, the gross budget increase is close to $3 million. The town in the current budget being willing to provide $1 million says that there's a problem of the 967K difference. But this number is after they have taken some, what I call almost one-time revenue type items to reduce their expenses down to this 967K so-called problem. Things like some.
The retirements of those teachers, is that kind of
That
rearranging the
no,
chairs?
no. Well, yeah, I think that was a savings of $25,000 or something. Yeah, but there's been some the special ed item that they collect from the state. I think it's 250K. There were 3 or 4 other items that add up to almost 900K. So my point being is that from the original budget, there is not a nickel of reduction. Okay, so their first pass budget, maybe there was that $53,000 that was shown before.
The tier 1.
Yeah, exactly. But the so-called tier 2 and tier 3 reductions, not a nickel has been taken. And instead, we're asked to go to the Board of Selectmen is going to be asked to go to the town meeting with a proposition 2.5 override for $1 million. And, $1 million override probably by itself is another couple $100 on the tax bill. And what it also does is if you only do that $1 million, then how are you going to cover it next year?
And the adjustment in our base is permanent.
Correct.
That override, I mean, that extra $200 just, it doesn't ever go away.
And I don't disagree with you, other than I believe, excuse me if I could, that you can propose an underride at some point in the future to reduce or eliminate whatever override may have been approved. So there is a way to do it.
What brave town would do that? It's admitting to the taxpayers, we stoked you the last year. I know.
But the danger, I believe, I agree with that, Keith, because when we were running $2 to $3 million excess levy capacity, I was one of the leaders that kept threatening to get behind an underride, but I could never get enough support from town officials, let me put it that way. But the danger is that you put that in, okay? And yes, you get that ability to tax that $1 million year after year, but then you've got to add another 5% on, another 5% on. So you keep adding it on, and you do not have the capacity to be able to continue to do that. So I'm hoping that the Board of Selectmen is going to stand up strong on next Tuesday night and say, no, we cannot afford a Proposition 2.5 override. And it's probably the tip of the iceberg, because they still have to make a decision on $700,000 or $800,000 worth of requests from the police department on so whatever Silver Lake might be to, Silver Lake's overall budget right now is 7.5%. So let's say they've somehow managed to cut it in half to 4%. Okay. Well, guess what? If their bottom line increases 4%, I guarantee you that when it goes through the assessment calculation, Kingston will end up getting a 6% increase, and Halifax or Plimpton will end up with a 2 or 3% increase. That's the way it goes when you're the big dog. And also when you do the state does their magic formula calculations, that says that Kingston is a wealthier town than either Halifax or Plimpton. And so we get hurt on the assessment. But I've probably said more than I should have on these items, but you now know about as much as I do concerning the overall budget that we're looking at. And I know that, well, I guess that's the other thing I'd like to bring up now, so we don't have to face it, is we're going to be reviewing the police and budget and fire budgets in the near future. I told you that
March 5th.
the police budget is up by 10% and the fire budget by 9.5. So the finance committee can approve those budgets, or theoretically, the finance committee can say, no, we don't recommend those budgets. Now, then we get into the situation where the selectmen have already approved them. So we can argue the point that it's the finance committee budget that goes to the warrant, goes to town meeting. Town council will strenuously argue, no, it's the Board of Selectmen that has the final say on what goes into the budget warrant article. I have some different ideas. I have some documents. I personally don't want to go down that road of fighting that again. That I'm going to say, hey, if the Board of Selectmen say this is the budget that's going to town meeting, I'm not going to fight that. If the finance committee as a whole decides they want to fight it, then we'll go down that road when we come to it. My point being that we have to have in mind where we want to go with the total budget, including these police and fire and schools that are up pretty high. Now, I have personally, as a finance committee chairperson, a finance committee member, I have already stepped back so much further than I thought I ever would by saying that I would live with a budget that has zero excess levy capacity. And that's why I've been working with the town administration, somewhat with the Board of Selectmen, that I have not exactly agreed with the 7% for I guess I would say yes. I specifically said that, hey, the 7.1% for local schools, I'm agreeing to it because I think that'll help the local school committees and the administration come down to closer to where we need to be. I haven't agreed fully on the police and fire, but at the same time, when I keep telling people, hey, I will agree with zero levy capacity, that's where I stand. But it's also the reason why I am 150% against any kind of an override, period. That I will be the first one standing up at town meeting, if that's what it comes to. If it passes town meeting, I'll be out there with my signs and out there fighting to have the residents vote it down. Because we're coming up with budgets year after year that are 5, 6, 7%, and that's not enough. Well, my God, when does it end? How do you bring it to an end? You bring it to an end by having the town turn down a 2.5, if that's what it comes to. Okay, and we've got to remember on the assessment. Keith and I had a talk with the town council. The assessment it's in somewhat the same situation that Silver Lake can send out an assessment to the town of Kingston of $18 million. The town of Kingston can in fact put on their warrant article $17 million. It doesn't have to be the amount that the regional school assesses us. It goes to town meeting. Town meeting approves the town budget, including the assessment. Now, if the other two towns approve the assessments as Silver Lake sent them, we're stuck. We have to find that money because two towns approved it, it's over. If one of those towns doesn't approve it, then Silver Lake's the one that has the issue. And because I'm just trying to get factors out there, because if Silver Lake comes in with an assessment, a bottom line assessment for all three towns of less than 4%, maybe there's no issue at that level. Okay, I'm done. Mike, you're first up. What are your thoughts or comments?
I'm happy to postpone those to a
Okay.
little later in the process.
David,
What's our projected free cash?
We can't project the cash.
what the free cash balance right now
Yeah.
is somewhere around 2 million
So the free cash balance,
before.
free cash balance was certified at 2.499 million.
Okay,
We used 400 plus at the fall town meeting. So we have in the capital plan, at this point, what I've suggested the capital plan, what I recommended the capital plan is going to be cut back, because in all honesty, I did not reduce the free cash by the 400,000 that we used at fall town meetings. It slipped my mind. So that's on me. So we've got to go back. So the capital planning committee is aware of that. They'll be discussing that over the next month to 6 weeks to trim back the capital plans, the capital recommendations that have been submitted by me, and with the goal of having a free cash number somewhere around $1 million.
after town meeting.
After town meeting, after the capital, after all the other uses of free cash that have historically been recommended here.
All right. And secondly, the selectmen normally vote this early? Don't they usually wait for us?
That's the same thing.
Normally, I would say no. This is the earliest I ever remember them actually voting a bottom line budget.
So
It's usually been more informal, that they would have seen the numbers, they would have generally, approved them, but they're kind of waiting on finance committee to come up with any recommendations. And sometimes in past years, there'd be that, finance committee came up with $300,000 worth of reduction recommendations. I would sit down with the chairman of the board of selectmen, we kind of toss it back and forth and, come up with an agreement and say, okay, this is the budget we want to go forward with. But I think the concern was, getting a budget out there so that the schools especially would know where we were standing on the budget, so that they would know, hey, do they have a $2 million problem, or do they have $1 million problem, or what do they have? Yes, Keith.
Yeah, if I could just add to that, I think the board took a vote again to kind of set a tone of where they wanted to be. But also they've said very clearly, I think, that, this was a first vote. On the agenda for next week, as the chairman mentioned, there'll be some discussion with the Kingston School Committee. And I assume that on some of the agendas moving forward into March, there may be agenda item like there is on next week's agenda, for additional discussion on the fiscal 26 budget, because things may come up, whether it be changes the finance committee wants to suggest, or some other modifications that where the picture becomes clearer as to what we're proposing, that they'll reconsider that vote. But to Kyle's point, I think the initial vote was taken to try to have the school committee understand where the board was with regards to a Proposition 2.5 override at this point.
Anything else, Dave? Derek, your chance.
I'm gonna defer to the member of the Board of Selectmen who just popped on really fast for a comment.
Okay.
I turned my camera on and hoping to be recognized. Just to address your question, David, I have my internet slow, so I apologize if I cut out. In the past, we had had several members who had wanted to wait until after Finance Committee had completed their review of the budget. We more recently have taken the approach that the budget is one that the administration puts together and then gives to Finance Committee for review. We have voted after changes have been made based on Finance Committee's review and recommendations. So that's the path we have tended to take in more recent years. So we work with the town administration to give you a budget that you can review in greater detail and then can re-vote at a later date. Does that make sense?
We accept all that help that we get from the Board of Selectmen. It's very important to us to have that assistance.
I get the sarcasm, Carl. I just, the point is that we've been asked to take a position. So that's what we are trying to provide you with, is our position on this budget and prior budgets. So I
And
hope
you
that's-
value us. You still value
yes.
our opinion.
Which is why we tend to vote again after we hear your feedback.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kim.
The only thing that I would just add is, and Keith, I sent you an email on that, is I think we have a $2,500 line item within the police budget for Narcan that I think we can support with the opioid fund. It's not a lot, but it's something. So that's the only thing that I wanted to ask the town administrator to look into.
Is that just a wash though? Because it's just in the general fund, right?
No, the opioid is in a
It's in a special fund.
it's in a special revenue fund that would ideally allow the budget to be cut by $2,500.
And one other thing.
In that account. No. Well, we can get to it when we get to police seconds. We'll get to it when we.
Mr. Chairman, have you informed the board of my potentially missing future meetings with no notice? That's the only other item I had.
No, I haven't.
Okay. For the rest of the board's knowledge, I'm expecting my first child to be born within the next month. So I have. Thank you. The surrogate is in California though, so I might have to fly out to California at the drop of a hat. So I will attempt to attend to every meeting I can, but no guarantees.
Yeah. Mhm. Well, congratulations. I hope you don't have to fly to California.
Deb, do you have any comments or questions or suggestions?
No, it was just the same. It was always my understanding that the Finance Committee presented the budget to the selectmen and, with our recommendations. And, just that what's been repeated continuously that it's not sustainable, the budget, the way it's going. And, we need to look at ways to make cuts. I mean, my taxes have gone up significantly, and I'm sure others have too, and it's just not sustainable. I also think of my elderly neighbors that, are not going to be able to afford their homes, due to the taxes, so.
I mean, almost 30% of the town's population is over 60.
Yeah, I'm beginning to think, I've been on this committee for off and on for 10+ years. And I'm beginning to think that the biggest impact that I can personally have is if we go to a Prop 2.5 override, is to get out there and work it just like I'd be working to get myself elected or to get somebody else elected. And that's maybe the impact that all of us on this finance committee can have, that if anybody's against it, well, we were going to have to get out there because we don't have enough authority or enough impact inside here. A few years ago, we did a recall because of some issues from the Board of Selectmen. Well, we may get to the point where we have to consider doing a recall for school committee people that continue to have these massive increases.
What color are the signs gonna be?
Something eye-catching.
I think I've seen one that's red and white already. Maybe it's a little blue, red, white, and blue.
Neon.
I would say that it will take a lot of persuasion from the school committee, and the police. On fire, I mean, they generate some substantial revenues for the town. And when I heard the chief say that currently, at their current staffing levels, that they have like a 6-minute response time. That's pretty awesome. I don't know if it could get any better, to be honest with you. So, and I heard that chief say, I'll make do. I mean, I liked his attitude. I did. I got more, the chief of police has a bit more convincing to do, from my perspective.
Well, again, the only thing I'll point out one time is that the fire chief is making do with a 9.5% increase.
Hey, I hear what you're saying.
9.5%
But that's
increase.
already built into the town's budget,
Yeah.
right?
Well, plus he got 4 new firemen
Fire,
2 years ago.
Again, we have, that his budget hasn't come up yet.
Right.
But it's the police that would push the override, as I understand.
Right, yes.
Not the fire.
So just for context, I'm not sitting here trying to advocate one way or another. For context, the $211,000 increase or add in the board of selectmen agreed to last week was to retain the existing number of police officers we currently have and the existing number of dispatchers we currently have. So in the budget that I presented to the board of selectmen originally, they would have had to have eliminated an existing police officer and an existing dispatcher to make that number work.
Yeah.
So in talking with the police chief, discussing that with the board of selectmen, the board of selectmen decided that they wanted to maintain the same staffing levels and utilize some of that new revenue that had been received rather than putting that into excess levy capacity. So as the finance committee thinks about, the increases there, I just want to let you know what they were for.
Right, but I thought Carl factored that in, that he gave the
It's in,
police
yeah.
department 200, and that's okay. And that's still added to our excess levy capacity.
So our excess levy
With that,
capacity is a bit higher now than it was in the budget I gave to the board of selectmen because of some of the new revenue.
The new revenues, but that's all, again, I'm just gonna have to do a deep dive into the police.
Absolutely.
I do.
I'm not trying to
In
advocate
terms
one
of
way or another.
how jeopardized is the public safety of the residents of Kingston by virtue of the present staffing.
So again, not to advocate for the police department, but staffing levels at the police department now have been the same at least for a decade.
I've heard that. I know, I've heard that. And the old police chief was really cheap and never increased the budget.
I'm just, so when there was a vacancy in the police department, as the police chief, the board and I and others had conversations, and I think made the board aware that, one of the things that a new police chief coming in from the outside is going to do is he's going to see the how far behind the Kingston Police Department is in a lot of different ways, including staffing levels. And I'm sure the police chief, far better than I, can give you as many metrics as you'd like to see.
Yeah.
On where we are, but again, I'm just trying to provide you factual information on what that 211,000 did for the police department tonight.
Oh, I think it's great. I don't have any problem with that. I just have a problem of an override.
So the only reason there would be an override
For the
because of
police department.
Additional new staff members, new police officers, sworn officers, over and above what they currently have now. That could create an override situation.
Again,
And just since we've got this on the table, I always like to make sure everybody's got all of the numbers, okay? The police budget, the actual police cost in 2024 was $4,309,000, 4,309. With the budget that we have right now, we're looking at $5,404,000. That's an increase of $1,000,000 $196,000 or 25.4% over the 2 years. So the fact is that we are doing things to get that department up to the level where it should be, okay? But I think it's important to recognize that before we even consider a override for police, we're doing our best to add $1.1 million, 25% in 2 years.
I agree with you completely. That's why I said I gotta talk to the chief of police, but he's gotta really persuade me that Rome wasn't built in a day. We can't rebuild a department that was neglected. So,
And I think the main reason I keep talking about fire and police is that I want us as a finance committee, I want the town administration, I want the board of selectmen to continue to focus on the fact that all of the town's financial problems are not just schools, that we are seeing budget increases, spending increases in public security just as fast as we are in schools. Yes, the school numbers are a bigger numbers, but we're spending more money in the police and fire at a rate that's just as unsustainable as are the schools.
and I would, I would, based upon what I've seen from the school committee,
Yeah, well, right now, we don't have to worry about a police override or a school override. We'll see what the Board of Selectmen
Right.
chooses to do, and then we'll see what town meeting chooses to do. Anything else on my general discussion here? I think that's about all I had. Does any other public comments? I guess I skipped over that in the beginning. Is there anybody else there that wants to make a comment from the public?
I move that we adjourn.
Do we have meeting minutes to approve?
yes.
There's just one. I don't know if anybody had a chance to read it.
Yeah, I didn't even see them, so
They were all.
Okay.
They were all here.
we'll do that next time.
All right. I move the finance committee adjourn its meeting of Wednesday, February 5th, 2025, 7:45 PM.
Second.
All in favor, Kyle, aye.
Michael, I.
Marcia, I.
Debbie, I.
Dave,
Derek, I.
Thank you, members.